this is the AC bracket on the 2AR. I had to remove the 2 studs. Real similar to the 2GR on the MR2, I had to remove the studs in order to make the compressor serviceable in chassis, which I'd prefer to do. The only difference is on the 2GR, this isn't a separate piece, it's integrated in the block. But not a huge deal, just have to get some bolts for it. Alright, so we have a couple issues. For one, actually, surprisingly, the radiator fits with the exhaust in place, except for the fan. So I'm gonna have to either run a low profile fan on this side or switch to a push fan on this side. Another issue with that is my fog lights get in the way of running a push fan, because these practically touch the, it's hard to see, but the fog light practically touches the condenser. So I might have to try to run something in between the two, a super low profile fan. Again, that's an option. I'll look into it. One final thing, the radiator aspect is the outlet would interfere with the compressor. And I'm not willing to give up AC on this. So I actually cut the outlet off. So I'm gonna have to do something like get an aluminum radiator and weld a new outlet on this side to make up for that. Now, last thing that's an issue in terms of the exhaust this time. First off, I was able to get it in the car after removing the brace, which I can put it back on, but I just need to remove it for install. It points right here, right up against this. I'm probably gonna end up ordering Mark's Frankenstein Motorworks header for the Spider. It hugs the block a lot tighter. I may even be able to run the factory fan shroud again. And also, I have very little clearance for exhaust. So I'm thinking I'm gonna pull a Bad Obsession Motorsports, notch the pan here, and run it this way under the pan and up and over that way. I don't know where the pickup is on this. I can make a new pickup if I need to, but I think it's on this side, so that'll be a problem. If it's on this side, it'll be okay. So not the end of the world, but it's definitely a pain. I don't think there's anything else under here besides the pickup that would get in the way. If anything, maybe the balance shaft, but I can cut most of that out anyway. So then not a huge deal. And I'm planning on, right behind here, running a transmission cooler. The factory one kind of sucks. It's ugly. It leaks. These are 2 outlets. For temporary purposes, I have a spare E153 over there. I may just take the loop from the E153 and just put it here. Just for now, probably a permanent temporary solution, but we'll see. So I took the pan off. Luckily, I've already planning on deleting the balance shafts, and I know Mark removed the balance shafts while keeping the carrier. However, I'm probably going to have to remove the carrier in order to route the exhaust through this area. And I'll notch the oil pan where I need to, but that'll be when it's time to make the exhaust. So hopefully that won't be a huge deal. I don't think it will be. The biggest issue I'll probably run into is the fact that the balance shaft actually holds the oil pan on, so I'll need to get a lot of shorter bolts, and I'll need to block up the oil feed, which I was planning on doing anyway, but the carrier won't be able to do that anymore. I'll probably have to run some kind of washer, or potentially even pin the sides over to hold the pin in place. Regardless, I think this was a good exercise. I'm pretty set that I'm actually just going to order the Frankenstein Motorworks header and his thermostat housing, because I'll have it pointing in the wrong direction. And hopefully I'll be able to find a factory style replacement radiator for this car that's fully aluminum, so that I can move the outlet from over here where it interferes with the AC compressor to over here where it'll be much more open and clear. So I wanted to kind of round off this video with like a short update list. It's been about a week since I've even turned on the camera. This past week I was sick with something. A fair bit's happened, nothing really build progress related, more just this chassis is a piece of garbage related. A lot of rust, bushings, a lot of painting went on, just a lot of new parts, like all brand new brake components, and all brand new suspension components as well. One of those things that I ended up replacing that I wasn't originally planning on was the wheel bearings, because when I held a knuckle in my hand and I could turn it, I would feel a slight notchiness on one of the bearings, so I decided it would be a good idea to just replace them all. In doing that, this is a knuckle from a RAV4. I bent this casting. I don't even know if it'll come across on video, but the mounts for the brake caliper are actually bent. The thing slipped on the press and bent those calipers. I just didn't have it supported in the right spot. I totally destroyed one of the bosses that mounts the brake shield in place, which I also demolished. So I had to go get a new one from a junkyard. Luckily, first-gen RAV4s are pretty common in junkyards. And that knuckle is shared across all first-gen RAV4s. There wasn't a update in any generation, and it was the same between 2 and 4 doors. I've also since made a few executive decisions to the car over this past week, and I'd like to take you over there. So I knew exhaust clearance was going to be an issue, but this isn't exactly what I had in mind. And this here doesn't paint the whole picture, because this part of the subframe is actually missing that goes forward, because I've repainted everything. I did have the idea of getting the Frankenstein Motorworks header. What I've actually decided to do is cut this right at the merge collector, weld a V-band in place, and that way I can point this wherever I need to, since this kind of points in the wrong direction. Then I'm going to essentially notch the oil pan. I'm just going to notch the oil pan probably around this area, wherever I need clearance for the exhaust. I'm probably just going to build the exhaust with the oil pan off, and have to notch the oil pan from there to get it back on. That way it can go behind and just up over the subframe and straight back to the rest of the car. One of the other issues I was dealing with is the AC compressor, and it actually runs into the radiator. I believe I said that. The outlet for the radiator down here actually will just hit the compressor. So I had to cut the outlet off of this radiator, and unfortunately in my searching I couldn't find a radiator that's made with aluminum end tanks that fits this car. My original plan was to just get the same radiator but with aluminum end tanks and move the outlet a few inches to this way, at which point it would come out here and have enough room to go up to the thermostat housing. Mark sent me a part number for this Dorman thermostat housing, which is the same bolt pattern as the stock 2AR, but it points more directly sideways. The issue with the 2AR thermostat housing is that it points pretty far forward, so no matter what, it was going to hit the radiator once I put a hose on it. So this one points directly parallel with the block, so I'll have more room to fit a hose there. I've had my eyes out for a radiator from another car that's similar dimensions that's available in aluminum end tanks, and I believe I found the closest one is a mid-2000s Accord. I'll put the exact car right here, and I'll also put a picture of the stock RAV4 radiator with the dimensions. So if any of you know a closer fit than this Accord radiator, let me know, and I'll just go ahead and order that one instead. On another note, my bearings finally came in from Toyota, my crank bearings and my rod bearings. So probably next step for this car will be to pull this motor back out, finish building the bottom end. If you remember in the previous videos, I did not actually assemble that properly because I was missing the bearings that I needed. And then some other basic chassis preparation. Clean out the engine bay. We'll probably put the subframe back on so that I can move the car out to the driveway, pressure wash it all out so that I can get a fresh start. Potentially even paint it, I'm not sure yet. And I do need to drill my holes and weld in the nut for the engine mount. And before it goes back together, I'll be refreshing this transmission. Probably at the least all brand new bearings, and definitely a couple synchros will need to be replaced. If you're familiar with Bad Obsession Motorsports, and if you've watched their E154F rebuild, it's going to be very similar. The gears are just a little bit smaller on this transmission. On that note, I'm really not sure if this will be strong enough to hold up to the abuse. I'm hoping it is, but if not, and I need to switch to a wide case, the shortest factory gear option for the wide case is 4.285. This is 4.933. I would really like to get close to that, and as far as I can tell, the only aftermarket option to keep a helical gear profile is a Phoenix Power 4.6 final drive ratio, and that's totally not produced anymore, and I haven't been able to find any for sale. If you find one, just send it my way, and I'll probably pick it up for future expansion. I do have the spare E153, however, it is the older style synchros, so I would probably pick up a newer E153 out of a Solara, or potentially even just an E53 out of a Camry, which still has the updated synchro design, but it's a older transmission. And then I could use the diff parts and the transfer case parts from this transmission to build that into an all-wheel drive wide case transmission. Of course, using the Phoenix Power 4.6 final drive to get close to this 4.933 final. On a final drivetrain note, I am looking for a second-gen RAV4 LSD. They came factory with a Torsen option. Second-gen RAV4s are pretty rare in the States anyway, and the LSD option wasn't super common to begin with, so it's not very easy to find them. My local junkyard had one which was spec'd with an LSD, however that car was gone by the time that I got there, so I wasn't able to pull that diff. I could run an E-locker. There is one available that fits inside this diff, but I would I don't want to say I would prefer a Torsen, but it would definitely be a cheaper step than spending $1,000 on an E-locker that's from China. I don't know how strong those will be. I don't know how they'll actually hold up to serious abuse. The second gen RAV4 has the exact same diff housing as this, so it just bolts straight into the chassis, and I still use my stock axles and everything. So that's the easiest upgrade path for that. So if you guys stumble upon a second gen RAV4, or at least ST185 and ST205 GT4 differential that's an LSD, send it my way. I'll also probably pick that one up. So hopefully I'll get back into the swing of things in the next couple of days, get this engine back out, get the chassis finished preparation. One last thing I found out about this car, I didn't realize it when I was pulling the engine out, but this is already a returnless car, and I looked it up. This runs at the same 44 PSI that Camrys run at, so I actually don't even have to touch the fuel system on this car, assuming the stock fuel pump is enough to keep up, which I believe it should be. I don't actually know the flow rate of this stock pump, but at least the fuel system is easy. I don't have to convert it to returnless like I did with the MR2. I'd like to have another video out by the end of next week, ideally with removing the engine, potentially finishing the rebuild on it, and probably starting the transmission as well. Once that bottom end's finished and the transmission's done, I can get ready for final assembly, put everything together and get it in the car, at which point I'll be able to start the wiring and exhaust. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. See you in the next video.